Hey everyone, I'm Mariana, and today I am here with the second part of my May wrap-up, talking about all of the books that I read last month. If you missed the first part of this, where I talked about all of the movies and TV series I watched in May, I will leave that linked in the info box below, along with everything else that I talk about in this video, but let's get started with the books. So last month, I ended up reading a total of 6 books, 3 of which are actually from the Witcher series, and I'll be talking about those first, so I don't have to keep switching between the series and the standalone book. So starting with the 3 books from the Witcher series that I read, and those are the first 3 in the series. 2 of them were actually rereads for me, and that would be The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny, and then the third one is Blood of Elves. I just have to say that I am so happy to be back in the world of The Witcher. I read the first 2 books a very long time ago, which is why I ended up rereading them. I didn't really remember that much, though I actually remembered more than I thought I did. These are a pretty big deal in Eastern Europe. I know these weren't really on many people's radars before the games came out here in the US, but if you're from Eastern Europe, chances are you've heard of the Witcher series. If you somehow have not heard of The Witcher, this is a fantasy series. It's an adult fantasy series rooted in a lot of Eastern European folklore. The main character is Geralt of Rivia. He is a man with some magical powers, and he basically fights monsters for a living. He definitely leans towards being an anti-hero. He's not really your traditional knight in shining armor. He is a very lovable character to read about, but he is dark and brooding, so if you're into that kind of thing, you would definitely enjoy this series. Now, as some of you may have heard, The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny are short stories collections, and because of this, as well as because of the weird publication order that happened in the US, there is some debate online as far as what order to read these books in. I can tell you 100% The Last Wish, Sword of Destiny, and then Blood of Elves, because if you start with Blood of Elves, you are going to miss the introductions of most of the characters in the series. Even though these 2 are short stories, they are where the story begins, and they are where you get introduced to the world. They are where you first see the relationships form between the characters. They are not just kind of filler stories that expand the universe. Also, even though these are short stories, they are in chronological order and they are connected. So they're not completely random stories, even though each story is pretty self-contained. I will say that out of these 2, I prefer The Last Wish a little bit more to Sword of Destiny. I ended up rating The Last Wish 4.5 out of 5 stars, and then Sword of Destiny was a 4 out of 5 for me. The difference between those 2 is that The Last Wish is much more kind of monster slaying, action-packed type of story collection, whereas Sword of Destiny deals a lot more with building the characters and kind of personal relationships. Both are really, really good. Neither of them are bad. Obviously, some stories are going to be stronger than others, but just be aware that Sword of Destiny has kind of a different approach to the whole thing. Now, as far as Blood of Elves goes, this is a novel, not a short story collection, and from here on out, all of the books are novels. I think that's where the confusion came from as far as whether it's necessary or not to read the first 2 books. It is. This deals primarily with the character named Ciri, whom people who have played the games are going to be familiar with. So a lot of this is about her and her training. Also, a lot of politics in Blood of Elves, definitely setting up a lot of stuff for the future books in the series. And surprisingly, pretty low on the Geralt action. There still is some monster slaying and some fun magic and all of that, and Geralt is definitely a presence in this novel, but he's a bit on and off here, which kind of surprised me. This was not a reread for me, the other two books were. So I definitely enjoyed this, but I have to say I love Geralt so much that even though I rated this 4 out of 5 as well, I enjoyed the first two a little bit more than this because I was kind of missing Geralt. Just as a side note, I do hope to finish the entire Witcher series this summer. I am really enjoying my binge read here. I have 4 books left after these 3, and once I finish the series, I think I will make a whole series review in one video, so I will talk a little bit more in detail about the overall themes and how everything goes. So look forward to that, but that's not coming until probably the end of August or early September because I think I'm going to read 2 books of The Witcher per month starting July. So should be done by the end of August. But yeah, loving this fantasy series. If you have not read it, which I feel like a lot of people haven't, I highly recommend this. On to the other 3 books that I read in May. The first one was Unbury Carol by Josh Malerman, which is also one of my most anticipated releases of 2018. And I have to say this was actually my least favorite read of May. Not to say that I didn't like it, I still enjoyed it, but this kind of was an issue of expectations for me, and I try to take my expectations out of my reviews, but this was not what I thought it was going to be. First of all, people shelve this and sell this as a horror/thriller novel, which this is not. This is a Western. This is a Western take on a Sleeping Beauty type of narrative. That's what this book is, and I have no idea why people keep shelving it as a thriller or even horror. There's no horror going on here at all. Probably because Josh Malerman's famous novel is Bird Box, and that one is a horror thriller, but do not expect this to be a thriller or a horror novel going into this. The problem that I have with that is that I am not a fan of Westerns, so I really wish I would have known what I was getting into with this one. Also, in case you're wondering, and this is neither a good or a bad thing, this is just something to be aware of, Carol is not the main character of this novel. Things revolve around her because, as per the premise, she falls into these comas that seem like she died, and pretty much nobody knows about this condition that she has. So one time, when she falls into a coma, her husband decides to tell everybody that she did die and to take her money. So that's kind of the premise of the whole thing. And she does spend most of this novel in a coma because the whole thing is whether or not she's going to be able to get out of this or whether she's going to be buried alive. But because she is in the coma, all the action comes from other people, and you occasionally get some point of view chapters from her where she is thinking about things, but she's not very active in this novel, so just be aware of that. Now, the characters that do matter here are her husband, who is a complete jerk, also her ex-boyfriend, who is trying to make it before the burial and to save her, and there's also a very interesting outlaw character who is probably the most fascinating out of all of them. That's what's going on here. Now, to be fair, the whole Western thing is an interesting setting for the Sleeping Beauty type of story, but I wasn't going into this with the right expectations. And even if I put my expectations aside, Westerns just don't do it for me. I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it for what it was, and I am impressed with how versatile of a writer Josh Malerman is. I'm very much looking forward to his next novel, but this was a tiny bit disappointing for me. And once again, not to the point where I disliked it. I wouldn't have given it 3.5 if I disliked it, but I kind of was hoping for something very different here. And obviously, that's not the author's fault. But yeah, Westerns, just not my thing. If you do love Westerns though, check this one out. Then I also read No Country for Old Men by Cormac McCarthy, and I know what you're thinking. Marianna, you just said you don't like Westerns. Why are you reading this? Well, I didn't say my logic makes sense, even to me, did I? There are a few reasons why I read this. First of all, I have not seen the Coen brothers film adaptation, and a lot of people love that, and I wanted to read the book before watching the movie. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is that I absolutely loved The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which was one of my favorite books that I read last year. So I wanted to give another one of his books a try. And I have to say, I like this a lot more than I normally would when it comes to a Western. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. But I did not fall head over heels in love with this like I did with The Road. If you don't know what this is about, this is set at the Texas-Mexico border where a drug deal has gone all kinds of wrong, and one of our lead characters finds some money where a lot of dead people are after the drug deal has gone wrong, and he decides to keep it, and that was a mistake for him because now someone is looking for him, and that someone is Anton Chigurh, who is a fantastic villain. Two things carried this book for me. One, of course, was Cormac McCarthy's wonderful writing. He is a master. I cannot wait to read another novel by him. But the second was the villain, because before this, I have heard about Anton Chigurh a lot. He's mentioned a lot as one of the best villains out there as far as the movies go, for the adaptation, and just in novels in general. And I now understand what people are talking about because he is ruthless but fascinating. Loved him. I am pretty sure this is as interesting as a Western could possibly get for me because I didn't really think I could rate a Western 4 out of 5 stars, but I did. And a lot of this has to do with how strong and interesting the characters are. I love great characters, as you guys know. And as I mentioned, with Cormac McCarthy. So would I recommend this? Yes. Absolutely. Just once again, know what you're getting into, which in this case I did, so there was no surprise like there was with Unbury Carol. Last but not least, my classic of the month was Mary by Vladimir Nabokov, or Mashenka, as the title originally states. Mashenka is kind of an endearing name for Maria. This is Nabokov's first novel. It's very short, as you can see, but this doesn't mean that it's not good. I really enjoyed it. It is a very personal novel for him. At first glance, this may seem like kind of a nostalgic story about first love. A lot of this has to do with an immigrant in Berlin kind of bringing back his memories of this girl, Mashenka, who he was in love with and who he left in Russia. But if you want to go deeper into the themes, this is actually a personal reflection of the author on the lives of these kind of displaced immigrants who have left Russia and haven't really found themselves in their new country. Mary, or Mashenka, isn't just a girl in this situation. She is the representation of that idealistic, kind of nostalgic image of Russia that immigrants carry with them. It's not the country that actually exists, it's the country that only exists in their minds as a memory. There's nothing wrong with reading this straight up as a nostalgic story of first love, but the themes were very clear to me, and then when I looked further into it, Nabokov has actually confirmed that Mary is representing Russia. I wish wish this was longer because the themes definitely needed some time to breathe, and I think he could have gone deeper into all of that, but this was his first novel. It is very thought-provoking. The prose is beautiful. Basically, a very strong debut novel for Nabokov. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Definitely enjoyed it very much, and the only question is, which Nabokov book do I read next? I have a few options, but we'll see. I'll definitely be reading at least one more this year. And this concludes my May reading wrap up. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, do let me know if you've read any of these books and what did you think of them, and also just generally let me know what you've been reading lately. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed already, consider supporting me on Patreon, and I hope you're having an awesome day. I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye!